The 2014 World War II epic Fury is about a five-man tank crew that's worked together from 1942 to 1945 under the leadership of Sergeant Don War Daddy Collyer, played by Brad Pitt. The movie centers on Collyer, who is trying to keep himself and his men alive while fighting Nazi Germany in the gruesome, barbaric end of the war. During the film, Sergeant Collyer uses many leadership styles, including paternalistic, autocratic, and laissez-faire, but the most prominent style is charismatic leadership. According to the Uccle text, the leader exhibits certain behaviors including a novel and appealing vision, an emotional appeal to values, unconventional behavior, self-sacrifice, confidence, and optimism. Throughout this segment, we will explore Sergeant Collyer's leadership strengths and weaknesses. In this first clip, Norman Ellison, a new member of Sergeant Collyer's crew, experiences his first tank battle, and he does not perform well. Collyer's message and vision throughout the film is that he will get his crew out of the war alive. This is an appealing vision to everyone involved because the casualties are high, the fighting is extreme, and almost everyone that has fought alongside Collyer and his crew has died. A vision of survival is very appealing, especially in a war.
I had the best bow gunner in the entire Ninth Army in that seat. And now I got you. I promised my crew a long time ago I'd keep them alive. You're getting in the way of that.
Throughout the film, Sergeant Collyer continuously appeals to his tank crew members emotionally. This is evident in the brotherly love and camaraderie shaped by the crucible of war. In the beginning of the movie, one of their comrades dies, and a tank crew member refuses to let go of his hand. On the other hand, Sergeant Collyer is not afraid to get physical. He tells one of his crew members that he's like a dog who only responds to the fist and the boot. Whether a tender moment or physical altercation, Collyer's crew believes his vision is to get them out of the war alive, but to do so, there will be casualties. The following scene occurs after Norman's first tank battle, where he is ordered to kill an unarmed German soldier by Collyer with the hopes that this will help Norman become acclimated to the climate of war. The dialogue between Norman and the other crew members show that they love Sergeant Collyer because he's the reason they've survived time and time again.
That might be crazier than a shithouse rap, but he's solid. We've been together since before Africa. I won't fight with anybody else.
Me neither. Yeah, but ain't no crew stay together like we have, Norman. That's because of him.
Sergeant Collyer uses unconventional behavior to help Norman understand that his job is to kill German soldiers. Throughout the movie, he incrementally introduces Norman, a new recruit, to death and killing. First, Norman was tasked with cleaning the blood out of the tank. Collyer and the tank crew capture some underage German soldiers, and he tries to pressure Norman into killing them. Finally, Collyer reaches his breaking point when Norman does not load his gun properly and almost gets everyone killed. Some of the crew find a German soldier in the forest, and it seems they will keep him as a prisoner of war. Collyer has something else in mind. He asks Norman to come out of the tank, and as we will see in the next scene, he pressures him to kill the soldier. The scene gets so emotionally charged that Collyer even puts his hand on top of Norman's and tries to get him to kill the soldier. Collyer isn't sadistic. He wants Norman to become a crew member that can be relied upon by the others, but that will not happen unless he can accept the realities of war. Let's take a look at the scene.
On a Canaan. On a Canaan. You are no goddamn good to me unless you can kill crowds. Put a big fat hole in his back. Put a big fat hole in his fucking back.
Sergeant Collyer is very confident and optimistic in almost every situation, even when the outcome seems hopeless. The clip we will see in a moment is when there are 3 American tanks versus 1 German tank, and 2 of the American tanks are destroyed. Collier's body language and voice are emotionally contagious to the tank crew. When he's planning a deceptive maneuver against superior enemy numbers, his voice and commanding style ignite them. He told his men that he kept them alive for 3 years, and whether he's been shot at or runs out of ammunition, he wants to continue to fight.
Boys, stay on it! When I say back up, you back up, left stick. All right! Bible, stand by, I'll call the shot. Roger, Roger! Gunner, now, reverse, left stick! Bible, steady! Steady! Oh, keep jumping out!
Come on, Bible! Motherfucking shoot him!
Steady! Now! For 1!
In Chapter 6, Ugel identifies 8 personality traits that make an effective leader. Let's look at 4: energy level and stress tolerance, emotional stability and maturity, personal integrity, and power motivation. These are the 4 Sergeant Collier demonstrates throughout the movie. Energy level and stress tolerance. War is chaotic. Soldiers and civilians are constantly in jeopardy, and anything can happen at any moment. In a war like World War II, this feeling lasts for years. But Sergeant Collier exhibits high energy and an ability to overcome almost any stress. A follower or weak leader would otherwise fold under the pressure Collier faces daily. This is best illustrated in the upcoming scene where Collier and his crew are coming back from battle and the crew members are completely wiped out. They've been through an exhausting battle. They're fatigued emotionally, physically, and spiritually. It shows on everyone's face except Collier. While returning to the base, he's still alert and ready. Only when he's alone does he show weakness or stress. Other than that, whether he's outnumbered, injured, or crew members die, he's ready to act. Watch this next scene and watch the crew. Listen to the menacing, dreary, and draining music. Then see how Collier still looks alert and ready for whatever's next. Emotional stability and maturity. Although Sergeant Collier can seem hostile, there are moments where he shifts gears to show a more stable personality and actions. As mentioned before, Norman is on the path to become a functional tank crew member, but to do that and survive, he must become a killer like everyone else. Collier tries to help him understand that. In one scene, the tank crew enters the town and engage in battle. One of the buildings catches fire, and German soldiers run from the building on fire, while surrounding American soldiers are happy to watch them burn to death. At this point, Norman decides to shoot the German soldiers that are on fire because he's sympathetic to their suffering, not because he's a killer. He gets criticized for doing it, but Collier takes a different direction. He's mature and stable enough to recognize that Norman's a rookie, and he makes the comment, "Way to stack 'em up, kid," while the rest of the crew is mad that Norman didn't let the Germans burn to death. This shows Collier's ability to remove himself from the emotions in the environment and train Norman. In the next scene we'll see, Collier appeals to Norman rationally yet again. This time, Norman just lost the love of his life. Collier calmly tells Norman that he's been fighting for 3 years and the killing will get worse before the war ends and that Norman must prepare for it.
I started this war killing Germans in Africa, then France, then Belgium. Now I'm killing Germans in Germany. It will end. Soon. But before it does, a lot more people gotta die.
Personal integrity. Sergeant Collier exhibits personal integrity throughout the movie by knowing and sharing with others why he's there and exhibiting actions that align with his goals. He wants to achieve his objectives, save his men, and kill as many Germans as possible. In one scene, there is downtime, and Collier saw a German walk through the camp and immediately picked a fight with him. In another example, Collier and his crew roll into town, and a German comes out with his hands up. He has the German executed. At every moment, his crew and movie viewers know exactly where Collier stands, whether or not his view is shared.
Right here.
The old man wants you.
How come?
You got a mission.
Let's go.
Wohin gehen Sie?
Die nächste Stadt einnehmen. Danach die nächste, dann die nächste. Ist ihr alle aufgeben?
You have a pen now, right?
Y'all getting married? What the fuck y'all doing? It's a fucking wedding? Hurry up. There are more of them.
What am I walking into?
Power motivation. Despite the conditions of the war, Sergeant Collier uses socialized power orientation. It may seem like he's a homicidal maniac, but when he's in non-threatening situations with his crew, he respects their opinion and even fights with them. In one scene, he decides to have lunch with two women in occupied Germany to provide some normalcy for Norman. When the other crew members find out, they act obnoxious and wonder why Norman gets special treatment that they don't. Collier could have easily ended this bickering, but instead he put up with the crew bullying Norman and threatening the women because he understands they're under a lot of pressure. The crew has been fighting for 3 years, nonstop, and he must allow them to express themselves to keep their buy-in. In these moments, power is more evenly distributed and more socialized.
There you go. Oops. Hang on there. I'm gonna fix that for you. I'm gonna just fix this for you real quick. I didn't touch her.
Switch with me.
We've spent time discussing Sergeant Collier's leadership style, but let's shift gears to discuss his leadership weaknesses. The 3 weaknesses he exhibits include 1, his inability to socialize with people to build relationships, and 2, provide coaching and mentoring when appropriate, and 3, he has unstable emotions. Let's look at 2 clips that show the lack of socialization and coaching mentoring skills. In the first clip, he greets Norman in a very cold and unwelcoming manner, which does not help Collier create a relationship with his new crew member. In the second clip, the same crew member does not know how to use a gun, and Collier leaves it to another member of his team to provide a short but most likely ineffective training session.
Sergeant Collier?
Maybe. What the fuck are you?
Private Ellison. I was told to report to you. I'm your new assistant driver.
No, you are not.
We finished it.
Done much killing?
No.
You will. Boys, take him through that gun.
Brother. What do I do with this? Shut up. Take a look at it. See that cover? Yeah. Open it. Now you killing. Close it up. No, you ain't.
Unstable emotions. While he shows emotional stability and maturity, there are times where he's severely compromised and does not. For instance, deleted scenes show that Collier is on a suicide mission because he's lost his loved ones. He is in the war because he killed his girlfriend and brother while driving drunk. Rather than go to jail, the judge sent him to die for his country, and that's exactly what Collier intends to do. This may explain why he will not leave the tank during the final climactic scene. He's not only going to achieve the mission he was given, he's also on a suicide mission. It's April 1945, and the war in Germany is coming to a close. As it reaches its climax, both American and German armies resort to savage tactics. While American forces come close to winning the war, the Germans become desperate and resort to almost any tactic to stall an American victory. Sergeant Collier has been leading and fighting with his crew since 1942 in diverse regions such as Africa, Belgium, and France. He has managed to keep most of his crew alive. In the opening scene, he loses his bow gunner, who is replaced by Norman, an innocent and green recruit who has no spirit, taste, or skill for the killing necessary to stay alive during a savage war. It becomes painfully obvious that his inexperience will not only cost him his own life, but it will cost the lives of the Fury tank crew. In early engagements, his inability to kill has led to friendly casualties and nearly killed the entire Fury crew. Collier addresses this issue several times. In one of their early interactions, Collier tells Norman, "I had the best bow gunner in the entire 9th Army in that seat, and now I got you. I promised my crew a long time ago that I would keep them alive, and you're getting in the way of that." In another scene, it seems that Norman is traumatized and will soon be ineffective. Collier reminds him of the reality of the environment and that he started this war killing Germans in Africa, then France, then Belgium, and now I'm killing Germans in Germany. It will end soon. But before it does, a lot more people gonna die. As an effective leader, Collier had to take several perspectives into account. His subordinates were a diverse group of men with different personality traits, making his job much harder. For example, he had to take into account Norman's perspective. Norman has to prove himself to other soldiers and himself to survive. Instead, Norman is a timid soldier that allows the lead tank in the search and destroy mission to be dismantled by Nazi child soldiers. This left Sergeant Collier in a challenging situation as a leader. He has a new soldier who does not fit into the pre-existing group and needs further training. As an effective leader, Collier directly intervenes in Norman's learning process because he understands the importance of a tight-knit group. This leads him to give direct, real-time feedback that ultimately ensures everyone's survival. Uckel says, walking around to observe operations and talk to employees is especially useful for middle managers and top executives who tend to become isolated from day-to-day operations. Although Sergeant Collier is very involved with day-to-day operations, there are still responsibilities that Norman had to take care of in order for everyone to survive. One instance required Norman to kill a Nazi soldier who was captured after a tank battle. Although Norman did not want to kill the soldier, Collier grabs his hand, places his own finger over Norman's, and has him pull the trigger. This made Collier look extremely insensitive, but taking Norman's rookie perspective into account, Collier eventually provided sympathy and support. Uckel explains that showing sympathy and support toward a subordinate during a stressful situation can help that subordinate be more receptive to the direction a leader may take. The only way to show support for a subordinate is through considering what mindset they had going into the situation. Sergeant Collier used influence process through internalization. He was able to inspire and influence his team to have common goals and values through impression management. He confidently promoted his values and beliefs in a favorable manner that exemplifies self-promotion. He also used exemplification by demonstrating unwavering loyalty and dedication to the mission. Collier uses various types of power, as described by Uckel. Through his rank and responsibilities, he exercised his legitimate power, but he was responsible for the decisions that would ultimately affect the livelihood of the crew, and his crew respected his authority. Collier did not shy away from using coercive power. In many scenes, especially when interacting with Norman, he demanded Norman move out of his comfort zone. For instance, Collier forces Norman to kill the unarmed German soldier. Sergeant Collier was also qualified and experienced to lead, especially after surviving against all odds during the war. His experience and knowledge enabled him to use expert power for the remaining battles. While there were casualties, the tank crew was able to survive 4 enemy encounters while Sergeant Collier trained Norman to be an effective bow gunner and member of the crew. His incremental growth ranged from an objection to killing to being eager to kill and finally identifying with the values of the other members of the crew. Collier's self-sacrificing actions also make him a charismatic leader. In the next scene, we'll see he informs his team that they are facing impossible odds and that it's okay for the crew to leave and hide. He is willing to stay and fulfill the mission alone to save his men. Collier is willing to lay down his life, which is another reason his men are inspired by him and his leadership.
Stop! What are you doing?
Get out of here. Get to that tree line. Boys, take care of yourselves. Get to that tree line. It's all right.
If our team were in Sergeant Collier's position and had to deal with a crew member who lacked experience and dedication, we would use many of the tactics Collier used, including stressing a novel and appealing vision and remaining confident and optimistic. However, we would have approached the relationship building differently by simultaneously focusing on building a solid relationship with the new recruit and the entire crew. If you can't trust your entire team during a time of war, then who can you trust? Defending Norman and treating him as an equal as soon as he joined could have influenced the crew to do the same sooner rather than later. By getting to know each crew member's background and personalities, we could use influence tactics based on reason and emotion to influence their treatment of Norman. If the crew doesn't support one another, the likelihood of dying only increases. From an emotional standpoint, we would also stress the reasons why we are fighting: for each other, our family and friends, and the safety of all we love in future generations, and if nothing else, to stand against evil. Generating an honor code or finding a mutual point of motivation and a common goal would also make it easier to be supportive of one another during the mission. Although Collier gained buy-in from his crew, he could have done this sooner by approaching their situation with a focus on camaraderie. Relations behaviors, specifically consideration, provide proof that building a relationship with subordinates usually leads them to be more satisfied. To successfully achieve this, personal favors, listening, defending, and consultation with subordinates should occur. Without building a relationship, it is difficult to gain buy-in from team members. This can make leadership an uphill battle. As a leader, it is important to understand each member personally to gain trust and understand what motivates the person before attempting to motivate or inspire. You can give someone all the knowledge, tools, resources they need, but you can't teach motivation. That has to be drawn from within, and a true leader will be able to. In this life or death situation, it's difficult to say which leadership styles and behaviors are most effective. In a time of war, leading with integrity does not always align with what may be considered ethical. It is important to take into consideration the context of this war. Killing someone who is seemingly innocent may be you and your team's only chance at survival. So although we propose building solid relationships through open communication and emotional appeals, this may not be entirely appropriate and could potentially backfire if members can't find motivation related to emotion and reason. Norman was an example of a soldier who would rather die than fight. More extreme measures may need to be taken to influence teams in a time of war.